Imagine a moment when everything feels on the line. Maybe it's the job interview you've been waiting for, the presentation you've spent weeks preparing, or the final minutes of a close game. Your hands feel heavier, your thoughts louder. One voice inside says, "You're going to mess this up. You always choke when it matters." Another voice shouts back, "No, you've got this. You're amazing. Everything will work out." Both voices compete for attention, pulling you in different directions, neither one helping you focus on the only thing that matters, the next step. This is the trap most of us live in, a constant tug-of-war between negativity and blind positivity. We either sink into the weight of doubt, replaying every past mistake, or we inflate ourselves with forced optimism, pretending away the challenge. Both distort the truth. Both take us out of the present moment. Neither helps us act with clarity. Neutral thinking is different. Neutral thinking doesn't tell you to sink into despair, and it doesn't tell you to paste on a smile and chant affirmations. Neutral thinking says, here's the reality. Here's what needs to happen next. Focus on that. It's simple, almost blunt, but its simplicity is what makes it powerful. It cuts through noise and grounds you in the moment where action is possible. The problem with negativity is obvious. When you let negative thoughts dominate, they build chains around you. You make a mistake, and your mind decides it's not just one moment. It's proof that you're incapable, proof that you always fail, proof that you'll never change. A single stumble becomes a story of permanent defeat. Negativity builds weight until you can't move. But positivity has its own problem. It feels better, but it can be just as dangerous. Blind optimism ignores reality. It convinces you that everything will work out, that nothing can stop you, that you're destined to succeed. And while that may sound good, it doesn't prepare you for when the storm comes. If your foundation is only, "It'll all be fine," then when you hit turbulence, the collapse is even harder. Positivity sets you up to be blindsided by reality. Neutral thinking doesn't deny reality, and it doesn't exaggerate it. It names the truth. You missed the shot. You made the mistake. You're nervous right now. Then it asks the only useful question, what's next? That's it. Not a prediction, not a judgment, just the next step. Picture a quarterback who just threw an interception. Negativity screams, "You've ruined the game. You're terrible. The whole team will hate you." Positivity whispers, "Don't worry. The next drive will be perfect. You'll win this no matter what." Neutral thinking says, "That play is over. Reset. What's the next call?" Which mindset gives the team the best chance of winning? Not despair, not delusion, neutrality. Neutral thinking is not passive. It's not about detachment or indifference. It is active, disciplined clarity. It takes strength to tell yourself the truth without layering on judgment. It takes focus to silence the pull of past mistakes and future fantasies and return to the present. Neutral thinking is not about how you feel. It's about what you do. This idea might sound small, but it's life-changing. Think about how much energy is wasted on drama in your own mind. How many times have you replayed a mistake long after it happened? How often have you tried to hype yourself up with empty promises only to collapse when things didn't go as planned? Neutral thinking strips all that away. It doesn't make false promises. It doesn't chain you to the past. It grounds you in now. It takes honesty to think neutrally. You have to be willing to face exactly where you are, without excuses or exaggeration. If you're out of shape, you don't tell yourself you're hopeless, and you don't tell yourself you're secretly fine. You admit the truth. I'm out of shape. If I want to change, I need to move today. That's neutral. If you failed in the past, you don't decide it defines you, and you don't pretend it never happened. You say, that happened. Here's where I am now. Here's the step forward. Neutral thinking also protects you from being consumed by other people's opinions. Critics may say you'll never succeed. Supporters may tell you you're destined for greatness. Neutral thinking listens, but it doesn't get carried away. It comes back to the core. What's real? What's next? That is where confidence is born, not in ego, not in despair, but in truth. And perhaps the most powerful part of neutral thinking is that it works in any situation. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, a soldier, a parent, a student, or someone simply trying to navigate the challenges of daily life. Neutrality is universal. Wherever you are, whatever the stakes, you can always return to reality and choose the next step. Neutral thinking does not require you to be fearless. It does not require you to believe everything will be perfect. It only asks you to be honest and present. That simplicity is what makes it unshakable. It's not fragile like positivity, and it's not destructive like negativity. It's steady, like a compass that always points to what's real. Thinking shines most clearly in moments of pressure, but its value goes far beyond the dramatic. Think about everyday life. You oversleep your alarm and start the day behind schedule. Negativity says, you've already failed, the whole day is ruined. Positivity says, don't worry, you'll catch up easily, everything will work out fine. Neutrality says, I woke up late, what's the first thing I can do right now to move forward? It doesn't minimize the problem, and it doesn't catastrophize it. It focuses on the next step. That focus is what saves the day from spiraling further. The same principle applies in relationships. Imagine a conversation where you say something you regret. Negativity tells you, you always ruin things, you're terrible at communication. Positivity tries to brush it aside. It's fine, they'll forget about it. Neutrality looks at the truth. I said something I regret. The next step is to acknowledge it and repair. Neutrality doesn't let guilt crush you, and it doesn't let ego excuse you. It gives you clarity to act. Some of the best examples of neutral thinking come from high-stakes environments. Soldiers in combat cannot afford the luxury of despair or blind hope. They must act on the information in front of them. If a mission goes wrong, they don't get stuck in the story of failure or cling to fantasies of guaranteed rescue. They ground themselves in the immediate. Where are we? What do we have? What is the next step? That neutrality saves lives. The same is true in sports. Watch a great tennis player after losing a point. The inexperienced player slams their racket, glares at the sky, and lets negativity poison the next few games. Or they try to force themselves into fake optimism, bouncing exaggeratedly, repeating hollow phrases like, I'm the best, I can't lose. Neither works. The best players reset immediately. They take a breath, adjust their grip, walk calmly to the next position, and prepare. They don't deny the miss, they don't dramatize it either. They reset in neutral. That's why they recover quickly while others unravel. Neutral thinking also helps us detach from illusions of control. Negativity obsesses over what could go wrong. Positivity imagines everything going perfectly. Neutrality accepts that we don't control outcomes, only actions. This acceptance is liberating. When you focus only on what you can actually do, your mind stops wasting energy on what-ifs. You save that energy for execution. But make no mistake, neutral thinking is not easy. It requires discipline. Our brains are wired to dwell on pain and to chase comfort. Negativity is sticky. Positivity is seductive. Neutrality feels plain, even unsatisfying, because it doesn't give the rush of drama. That's why it takes practice. You have to deliberately train yourself to notice when you've slipped into stories and pull yourself back to reality. Over time, this practice rewires your default response. Instead of spiraling, you reset. Instead of clinging to hope, you focus. You may wonder, if neutral thinking is so powerful, why doesn't everyone use it? Because it lacks glamour. Negativity at least feels familiar. Positivity feels exciting. Neutrality is steady, unflashy, grounded. But in the long run, it's the only approach that consistently works. It keeps you calm in storms, resilient after failure, and steady in success. At its heart, neutral thinking is about responsibility. You stop blaming the past or fantasizing about the future. You own the present. You say, here I am. Here is what's real. Here is what I can do. This ownership is the foundation of confidence because it proves to yourself that no matter what happens, you always have a choice about your next step. The more you practice neutrality, the more you discover its strength.
You miss a deadline, but instead of collapsing into shame or pretending it's fine, you take the next action. You lose an opportunity, but instead of spiraling into despair or forcing optimism, you prepare for the next one. Each time, you remind yourself that setbacks are not permanent verdicts, they're just moments, and moments pass. What matters is what you do now. Neutral thinking is not glamorous, but it is unshakable. It is the quiet discipline that keeps you steady when negativity wants to drown you and positivity wants to distract you. It is the compass that always points you back to reality, no matter how lost you feel. And once you learn to trust it, you begin to see that neutrality is not emptiness, it is freedom. Freedom from drama, freedom from illusions, freedom to act with clarity. As you step into this way of thinking, you'll notice something profound. Your life becomes less about constant emotional swings and more about steady progress. You stop wasting time on battles in your head and start putting that energy into what actually moves you forward. And over time, this creates a quiet, unshakable confidence, not because you convinced yourself everything would work out, but because you learned how to act moment by moment, regardless of outcome. This is the power of neutral thinking, not optimism, not pessimism, just truth, action, and presence. And from this foundation, every other principle of resilience and performance is built.
Negativity is sticky. Once it grabs hold, it rarely lets go quickly. You make a mistake and your mind doesn't stop at acknowledging it. It builds a story around it. You always do this. You'll never change. People are going to judge you. You've blown your chance. That story grows heavier the more you replay it. What started as a single event, a missed shot, a failed test, a poorly handled conversation, becomes a full identity. You don't just think, I made a mistake. You start to believe, I am a mistake. This is the trap of the negativity loop. One thought sparks another, and soon you're spiraling. And because the brain is designed to focus more on threats than on neutral events, negativity lingers longer than success. You might accomplish 10 things today, but if one goes wrong, that's the one your mind will replay on loop. This is not weakness, it's survival wiring. The problem is, in modern life, it works against us. What once kept us alert to danger now keeps us chained to self-doubt. The danger of negativity is not just emotional, it's practical. When your mind is stuck on what went wrong, your body follows. Stress hormones surge, muscles tighten, focus narrows on the problem instead of the solution. Negativity convinces you that your worst fears are inevitable, and in doing so, it drains the energy you could use to act. The loop becomes self-fulfilling. You fear failure, focus on failure, tighten up, and fail again. Neutral thinking interrupts this loop. Instead of feeding the story, it breaks the chain at the root. You made a mistake. That's over. Here is the reality now. What's the next step? By refusing to add judgment or drama, you stop the spiral from gaining momentum. You acknowledge what happened, but you refuse to turn it into a prophecy of doom. Take the example of a student who fails an exam. Negativity says, I'm stupid, I'll never succeed, everyone's smarter than me. That thought loop will likely lead to less studying, more stress, and more failure. Positivity tries to counter with, I'll ace the next one, I'm brilliant, everything will be fine. But if the student hasn't changed their study habits, those words won't carry weight. Neutrality cuts through both. I failed this exam. That's the fact. The next step is to study differently, focus on areas I missed, and prepare better. No spiral, no sugarcoating, just reality and action. One of the most destructive aspects of negativity loops is how they reach backward and forward in time. You miss one opportunity, and suddenly your brain drags up every failure you've ever experienced, stacking them together as evidence that you're doomed. Then it projects forward. If you failed before, you'll fail again and again and again. The loop traps you in a timeline of permanent inadequacy. Neutral thinking breaks that illusion. It refuses to let the past define the future. It says, that was then, this is now. The only thing that matters is the choice in front of me. Another way negativity loops control us is through language.
The words we use become chains. When you say, "I always fail," or "I can't handle this," your brain listens. Language builds identity. Neutral thinking teaches you to change the language. "I failed this time. I didn't handle it well today." That shift matters. Instead of global identity statements, you reduce it to the specific moment. And if it's only about this moment, you can change the next one. Breaking negativity loops is not about ignoring pain. It's about refusing to let pain dictate your path. You may feel the sting of failure, that's real, but you don't add the story that says it defines you forever. You keep the facts small, grounded, and contained. You breathe, reset, and return to the next step. That practice is the first true step toward freedom from negativity's grip. Breaking free from negativity loops requires both awareness and discipline. The first step is noticing when you've slipped into the spiral. This sounds simple, but most people don't even realize when it's happening. The thoughts feel automatic, almost invisible, but they leave behind heaviness, tightness in the chest, irritability, hesitation. Learning to pause and ask, "What story am I telling myself right now?" shines a light on the loop. And once you see it, you can begin to break it. One of the most effective ways to disrupt negativity is through interruption. Athletes clap their hands after a mistake. Speakers take a deep breath before continuing. Soldiers reset their posture in the middle of chaos. These small physical cues are signals to the brain. The last moment is over. Start fresh. Without them, negativity lingers and multiplies. With them, you create a clean break. Language is another tool. Instead of saying, "I always mess up," you shift to, "I didn't get this right today." Instead of declaring, "I can't handle this," you say, "I struggled with this one, but I'm still learning." By changing your words, you shrink negativity down to its true size. A single event, not a permanent identity. That shift is the heart of neutral thinking, staying honest without turning facts into fatalistic stories. Consider a pilot flying through turbulence. Negativity says, "This is dangerous, I'm going to lose control." Positivity says, "It will all smooth out any second, don't worry about it." Neutrality acknowledges, there is turbulence. Grip the controls, adjust altitude, stay focused. That clear thinking is what gets the plane safely through. The same principle applies to your daily life. Neutrality breaks panic by focusing you on the next step, not on the endless what-ifs. Think too of the performer who forgets a line on stage. Negativity hammers them with shame. You ruin the performance, everyone's laughing. Positivity tries to override it. Don't worry, they didn't notice, you'll be perfect in the next scene. Neutrality says, you missed the line, improvise, move to the next cue. That simple reset turns disaster into continuity. The audience forgets what happened, the performer recovers quickly. The spiral is broken. Escaping negativity loops also requires perspective. When you zoom out, you realize that most failures are not permanent marks, but temporary bumps. The confident, neutral mind knows this. Setbacks are single moments, not lifelong sentences. The fragile mind treats them like definitions. But if you've trained yourself to think neutrally, you remind yourself, this moment is one of many. What I do next matters more than what just happened. And perhaps most importantly, breaking free from negativity is not about denying emotion. It's about moving through it. You can feel the sting of disappointment, the weight of frustration, the ache of regret. But you don't let those feelings dictate your identity or your future. You accept them as signals, not as verdicts. Neutral thinking lets you feel without becoming paralyzed by feeling. Escaping negativity loops does not mean you'll never feel negative again. It means negativity will no longer control you. You will have the tools to pause, to reset, to shrink the story down to its real size, and to return to the only place where change is possible, the next action. Each time you practice this, you weaken negativity's grip. Each time you recover faster, you build trust in yourself. And over time, that trust becomes confidence. Not the fragile kind built on fake positivity, but the grounded kind built on resilience and truth. This is how you break the spiral. Not by swinging wildly to optimism, not by drowning in despair, but by standing in the middle, steady, neutral, and clear. And once you've built that ability, negativity no longer owns you. You own yourself.
For most of our lives, we've been told to stay positive. Teachers say it, coaches say it, motivational speakers shout it from stages. The message is clear. If you can just think positive thoughts, you'll win. If you believe everything will work out, it will. If you drown out doubt with optimism, success will follow. And for a while, positivity feels like it works. It feels lighter than negativity. It feels empowering, hopeful, and even intoxicating. But when the test really comes, positivity often cracks. The problem isn't that positivity is bad. It's that it's incomplete. Optimism is nice when the path is smooth. But when life throws chaos your way, the rejection letter, the injury, the crisis you didn't see coming, positive thinking can collapse under the weight of reality. It promised comfort, but it didn't prepare you. It told you everything would be fine, but when it wasn't, the gap between hope and truth leaves you reeling. Positivity often acts like a bandage on a deep wound. It covers the surface, but it doesn't stop the bleeding. You tell yourself it'll all be okay, but deep down, you know you haven't fixed the problem. That dissonance makes positivity fragile. When the world proves your affirmations wrong, you don't just feel the sting of reality, you feel the betrayal of false hope. Consider the athlete who enters a competition relying on positivity alone. They tell themselves, "I'll win, I'll crush it, no one can stop me." But when the game begins and they fall behind, when mistakes start piling up, positivity doesn't have answers. The optimistic script falls apart in the face of adversity, and with it goes their confidence. Neutral thinking, on the other hand, would prepare them to face both possibilities, success and struggle. It doesn't promise perfection. It grounds them in reality. This is the score. Here's the next play. Positivity also creates pressure. When you convince yourself that everything must work out, you leave no room for struggle. Any setback feels like failure because it contradicts the story you told yourself. You said it would be easy, so when it isn't, you feel like you've lost. Neutrality is gentler and stronger at the same time. It accepts setbacks as part of the process. It doesn't pretend they won't happen, so when they do, you're ready. Another issue with positivity is that it often demands dishonesty. If you're nervous, you're told to suppress it. If you're afraid, you're told to deny it. If you're struggling, you're told to plaster on a smile. This isn't strength, it's avoidance. Neutral thinking allows honesty. You admit, "I'm nervous, I'm afraid, this is hard." And then you say, "Here's what I can do anyway." Neutrality doesn't require you to lie to yourself to feel strong. It builds strength on truth. Think about someone going through hardship, maybe financial stress, maybe the loss of a loved one. Positive thinking tells them, "Stay strong, look on the bright side, everything happens for a reason." But those words can feel hollow, even cruel. They dismiss pain instead of acknowledging it. Neutral thinking is different. It says, "This hurts, this is hard, but here is what's real right now, and here is what you can do next." Neutrality doesn't erase pain, but it allows you to keep moving through it. Positivity also carries the danger of ego. When you constantly tell yourself you're destined to succeed, you may stop practicing as diligently. After all, why practice so hard if you've already convinced yourself you can't lose? Neutrality avoids this trap. It doesn't tell you you're destined to win. It tells you to keep showing up, to keep working, to keep taking the next step, regardless of outcome. Positivity feels good in the short term, but it often collapses in the long term. Neutrality feels plain at first, but it builds resilience that lasts. The neutral mind doesn't rely on constant motivation or affirmations. It relies on truth and action. That is why, when life inevitably tests you, neutrality stands while positivity falters. Positivity fails not just because it's fragile, but because it distracts. When you're busy convincing yourself everything will be perfect, you aren't preparing for the challenges that actually await you. You're busy rehearsing comfort instead of rehearsing reality. And reality always arrives, whether you're ready or not. Neutrality is what bridges the gap between preparation and performance. It says, this will be hard. You might stumble. Here's how you'll respond. That mindset equips you for truth. Positivity might soothe you temporarily, but it doesn't strengthen you. Neutrality does. Take the example of a startup founder. Positivity says, our product will change the world. Success is guaranteed. That belief may energize the team at first, but when the first investor says no, when the first customer churns, when the first big competitor appears, the fragile bubble bursts. Neutrality, on the other hand, prepares the founder differently. The odds are tough. Many investors will reject us. Customers may walk away. Competitors will appear. Here's how we adapt. Here's the next action after rejection. That realism makes endurance possible. Instead of being crushed by setbacks, the founder stays steady because they never expected the path to be easy. Another example, a patient facing recovery. Positivity insists you'll bounce back quickly, you'll feel great in no time. When recovery takes longer than expected, disappointment hits harder. Neutrality says healing takes time. Some days will hurt. The next step is to show up for therapy today, to take the exercises seriously, to be patient with the process. Neutrality anchors the patient in discipline, not false reassurance. The truth is, positivity often sets us up for collapse because it defines strength as never struggling. But confidence is not the absence of struggle, it's the ability to continue through it. Neutrality understands this. It doesn't demand you feel amazing every step of the way. It only asks that you keep acting in truth. There's another hidden danger of positivity. It can create denial. If you tell yourself everything is fine when it isn't, you ignore warning signs. You delay action. You allow small problems to grow into crises. Neutrality prevents this by insisting on clarity. It asks, what's real right now? What needs attention? That question is uncomfortable, but it saves you from collapse later. In the end, positivity can inspire, but it cannot sustain. It can boost your mood, but it cannot anchor your life. Neutrality might not sound as glamorous, but it is what carries you through storms. It keeps you honest, focused, and ready. And the more you practice it, the more you realize you don't need constant positivity to feel strong. You need presence, you need clarity, you need truth. That is why positivity alone will never be enough. It's better than negativity, yes, but it's not the highest ground. Neutral thinking is. Because neutrality doesn't demand you feel invincible, it simply demands you face reality and act in the moment. And that, in the long run, is the only path to unshakable confidence.
Pressure changes everything. In practice, you feel steady. In calm moments, it's easy to tell yourself to focus on the present, to stay neutral, to act without drama. But when the spotlight hits, when it feels like all eyes are on you, when the outcome feels heavy, the mind behaves differently. Your thoughts speed up, your body tenses, and suddenly neutrality feels distant. This is where most people collapse. Under pressure, negativity grows louder. It whispers, you can't handle this, you're going to mess up, everyone will see you fail. Or positivity tries to shout back, you've got this, you're the best, nothing can go wrong. Neither voice helps you execute. Negativity fills you with fear. Positivity distracts you with false comfort. Neutral thinking cuts through both. Here's the situation. Here's the step in front of you. Do it. Pressure magnifies consequences. A missed free throw in practice is just a miss. A missed free throw in the final second of a tied game feels like the world. That magnification triggers the mind to spin into stories. Negativity drags you into the past. Remember the last time you missed. Remember how it cost you. Positivity pulls you into the future. This one shot will win it all. You've got this no matter what. Both yank you away from what actually matters, your breath, your form, your follow-through. Neutral thinking keeps you here, in this moment, with this shot. Think of a surgeon in the middle of a complicated procedure. Negativity could paralyze. If you slip, this could go horribly wrong. Positivity could mislead. Relax, you've done this so many times, nothing bad will happen. Neutrality is steady. This is a delicate procedure. Focus on the incision, adjust pressure, move carefully. Neutrality doesn't ignore risk, and it doesn't promise ease. It guides the mind to what is real and controllable. Pressure moments are not limited to athletes or surgeons. We all experience them. The critical job interview, the conversation that could change a relationship, the presentation that may alter your career. In those moments, the mind races ahead, writing stories about everything that could go wrong or everything that could go right. Neutral pulls you back to the one place you can act. This question, this answer, this breath, this step. The key to neutral thinking under pressure is preparation. You cannot expect neutrality to appear magically in the storm if you have never practiced it in calm. That is why elite performers resets. They practice responding neutrally in training, so when the lights are bright, their brain has a script ready. They breathe, they focus on cues, they direct their attention back to the present. Neutrality becomes muscle memory. Without neutrality, pressure feels like drowning. With it, pressure becomes an arena where you can still breathe, still think, still act. The stakes may be high, but your focus remains small, the next controllable step. And when you act from that space, pressure stops being an enemy. It becomes fuel.
When pressure rises, most people either freeze or force themselves into denial. Neutral thinkers do neither. They ground themselves in process. They know the mind wants to sprint ahead into the future, into consequences, fears, what-ifs. So they bring it back to controllable steps. They know the body wants to tense up, so they reset with deliberate breathing. They know emotions want to swell, so they anchor themselves in cues, a repeated word, a ritual gesture, a mental image. These small anchors become lifelines under fire. Think about an archer in competition. Negativity whispers, if you miss this shot, you'll lose everything. Positivity insists, you'll hit the bullseye, you can't fail. Neutrality strips both away. Breathe, draw, focus on the target, release. The archer doesn't need stories, they need precision. And precision only lives in the present. Neutrality under pressure is not about ignoring nerves. It's about training your relationship with them. Pressure raises adrenaline, and adrenaline sharpens energy. If you treat nerves as proof of weakness, they overwhelm you. If you treat them as fuel, they steady you. Neutral thinkers don't say, I'm not nervous. They say, I feel nerves. That means I care. That means my body is awake. Let's direct it into the action in front of me. This shift changes panic into readiness. In business, the principle is the same. A leader facing a boardroom full of skeptical investors doesn't waste energy on, what if they laugh at me? What if they say no? Nor do they indulge in blind positivity. They'll love this. It'll be an easy win. Neutrality focuses. Here are the numbers. Here's the strategy. Present clearly. Answer questions, one point at a time. Confidence comes not from pretending certainty, but from acting with clarity in uncertainty. Preparation is the hidden key. Neutrality and pressure doesn't just appear when needed. It's practiced long before the big moment. Soldiers rehearse drills so deeply that when chaos explodes, their brains don't need to debate. They simply execute. Athletes build routines so precise that when thousands scream in the stands, they still hear the rhythm of their breath, the bounce of the ball, the feel of their stance. Musicians practice until muscle memory carries them even when adrenaline spikes. These rehearsals build a neutral script for the brain to follow when emotions threaten to hijack it. Neutral thinking also changes how you recover inside pressure moments. Imagine a chess player making a mistake mid-game. Negativity says, it's over, I blew it. Positivity says, I'll find the winning move, don't worry. Neutrality says, I miscalculated.
Now, what's the best next move? By returning to the present, they preserve clarity and buy themselves a chance to fight back. Neutrality doesn't guarantee victory, but it keeps you alive in the game, and often that's enough. The more you practice neutrality under pressure, the more you realize something powerful. Pressure is not the enemy, it's the stage. It's the moment when your preparation, your routines, your choices all meet reality. Negativity collapses in this stage. Positivity often crumbles. But neutrality thrives because it never asked for certainty. It only asked for the truth in front of you and the courage to act on it. Neutral thinkers don't look calm because they feel no pressure. They look calm because they've trained their minds to anchor and process no matter the storm. They trust themselves not to predict the outcome, but to execute the step in front of them. And when you live this way, pressure stops being something you fear. It becomes something you embrace because you know you can handle it, one neutral step at a time.
Neutral thinking may sound like a tool you pull out in crisis, but in truth, it is built long before the storm arrives. You cannot expect neutrality to appear in a championship game, in a medical emergency, or in a career-defining meeting if you have never practiced it in the smaller, quieter spaces of daily life. Neutrality, like muscle, strengthens with repetition. Every ordinary moment becomes a chance to train your mind to return to clarity instead of slipping into drama. Training begins with awareness. Most of us spend our days lost in stories, exaggerating difficulties, minimizing wins, dramatizing the mundane. Neutrality asks you to interrupt that pattern. You spill your coffee in the morning. Negativity says, "Great, this day is ruined." Positivity insists, "No big deal, today'll be perfect anyway." Neutrality grounds you. Coffee spilled? Clean it. Move on. That moment might seem insignificant, but it is training. Each time you cut short the spiral, you strengthen the habit of returning to reality. Another practice is self-talk. The way you speak to yourself shapes your mind. Negative self-talk is heavy and harsh. "I'm terrible at this. I'll never get it right." Positive self-talk swings to the other extreme. "I'm amazing. I'll nail this no matter what." Neutral self-talk is simple. "I didn't get it right today. What's the next step?" Repeated daily, this kind of self-talk rewires your brain to respond with steadiness instead of drama. Routines are also a form of training. Morning rituals, work habits, pre-performance checklists, all of these create structure that grounds the mind. When you practice consistency, you reduce the space for spirals to form. A neutral morning routine might look like this. Wake up, breathe deeply, review the day's tasks without judgment, and take the first action. You don't dramatize the day as impossible, and you don't romanticize it as perfect. You acknowledge, this is the day, this is the plan. Begin. Small daily challenges also train neutrality. When you deliberately step into discomfort, a cold shower, a tough workout, a difficult conversation, you give yourself the chance to practice neutral responses. Negativity says, "This hurts, I can't handle it." Positivity says, "I love this, I feel amazing." Neutrality says, "This is hard, I can take one more step, keep moving." Over time, your tolerance for discomfort grows, and with it, your confidence. Training the neutral mind daily is less about intensity and more about repetition. It's not about one dramatic breakthrough, it's about hundreds of small resets. Each reset is a rep. Each rep builds a new default. Instead of spiraling into negativity or hiding in optimism, your reflex becomes, what's real? What's next? That reflex is the essence of neutrality.
Neutrality grows stronger the same way any skill does, through deliberate practice. The daily training is subtle, but over time, it transforms your default reactions. Instead of being swept away by frustration, instead of needing to hype yourself up with empty mantras, you learn to pause, breathe, and choose the neutral response. This practice begins in small things, but its effects echo into the big things. Consider the way you respond to minor inconveniences. You're stuck in traffic. Negativity says, "This is awful. I'll never get there. My whole day is ruined."
Positivity says, it's fine, this traffic will clear soon, no need to worry. Neutrality says, traffic is here, I can't move faster. Use this time to breathe, listen, reflect. Instead of stress, you find steadiness. These small responses are training. Each time you choose neutrality in little frustrations, you're rehearsing for neutrality when life throws bigger storms. Another exercise is journaling. At the end of the day, write down one situation that triggered negativity. Then rewrite it neutrally. For example, I bombed my presentation today becomes, I stumbled in the presentation. I didn't prepare this section well. Next time, I'll practice more. This simple act rewires the brain. It teaches you to take the sting out of experiences by stripping away judgment and focusing on fact plus next step. Over time, your mind learns to narrate life neutrally in real time without needing to correct it later. Physical habits also support neutrality. Breathing practices, posture resets, or grounding techniques create space between emotion and reaction. When your body calms, your mind follows. Neutral thinkers use this connection deliberately. They know that if they let the body spiral into tension, the mind will follow into drama. But if they reset the body, the mind resets too. Training these physical cues daily makes neutrality accessible even in chaos. Neutral training also extends into conversations. When someone criticizes you, negativity pushes you to defend yourself aggressively, while positivity urges you to ignore it and pretend it doesn't matter. Neutrality listens calmly. This is feedback. Some of it is useful, some of it isn't. Take what helps, leave the rest. Practicing this daily in family conversations, workplace meetings, or even online comments builds resilience against the pull of external noise. The key to daily training is repetition, not perfection. You will still slip into negativity. You will still occasionally lean on hollow positivity. But each time you notice it and reset, you've added another rep. Over weeks and months, those reps accumulate. Your reflex changes. You stop dramatizing by default. Neutrality becomes your new normal, and the payoff is profound. When the big moments arrive, the interview, the performance, the crisis, you don't need to scramble for confidence. You've been training for it every day. Your mind already knows how to anchor in the moment, how to face reality without fear, how to act with clarity. Neutral thinking has become muscle memory, built through thousands of small choices in the quiet of ordinary life. That is how you train the neutral mind daily, not through speeches, not through hype, but through small, consistent resets that stack into unshakable resilience. And once neutrality becomes your default, life stops feeling like a roller coaster of highs and lows. It becomes a steady path, walked step by step with clarity and calm.
Failure is not an accident in life. It is a guarantee. No matter how talented, disciplined, or prepared you are, setbacks will come. You will lose opportunities, you will make mistakes, you will face rejection. The question is never if failure will appear. The question is always, what will I do when it arrives? Most people meet failure through the lens of negativity. A mistake becomes proof of permanent inadequacy. A rejection becomes evidence of worthlessness. They built stories that chain them to the past. I always fail. I'll never change. This is just who I am. Others meet failure with forced positivity. They try to erase pain by telling themselves it doesn't matter, or by making empty promises. It's fine, everything happens for a reason, I'll bounce back immediately. But when the sting remains, when reality doesn't match the script, their optimism collapses. Neutral thinking offers another path. It looks at the setback honestly. This happened. It hurt. It didn't go as planned. Then it anchors in the present. What is true right now? What is the next step? Neutrality doesn't erase pain, but it prevents pain from becoming identity. It lets you absorb the blow, learn, and continue forward without collapsing under stories of doom or hiding under false hope. Consider the story of an athlete who loses a championship game. Negativity says, this proves you're not a winner. You'll never reach the top. Positivity says, don't worry, next year you'll definitely win. Everything will go perfectly. Neutrality says, we lost. That's the truth.
What can I learn? What do I need to do tomorrow to prepare differently? The loss stings either way, but neutrality transforms it from a verdict into a teacher. Resilience comes from this shift. When failure doesn't define you, when setbacks are contained to the moment, you discover that you are not fragile. You are capable of recovering, of adapting, of continuing. Each time you do, you add to a memory bank of strength. You prove to yourself, I've been hit before and I stood back up. I can stand up again. Neutral thinking also guards against shame. Shame says, I failed, therefore I am a failure. Neutrality says, I failed at this task, but I am not the task. That distinction frees you. It allows you to take responsibility without drowning in identity-based despair. And responsibility is crucial because it is the doorway to improvement. You cannot grow from what you refuse to admit. But resilience through neutrality is not passive acceptance. It is not about shrugging and saying, oh well, that's life. It is active recovery. It is looking at the wreckage, naming it truthfully, and then asking, what's the next step I can control? That step might be small, sending another application, practicing one more hour, having one honest conversation. But each small step pulls you out of paralysis and back into motion. Resilience grows not from pretending you never stumble, but from proving to yourself that you rise each time you do. And the only way to rise consistently is to keep your mind neutral, steady, and focused on what's next.
Resilience is not about never breaking. It's about how you respond after you've been broken. Neutral thinkers don't deny that they've stumbled, and they don't minimize the impact. They face it directly, but without attaching judgment that corrodes their identity. This balance, full honesty without drama, is what allows them to get back up faster than others. Consider Thomas Edison, who famously reframed thousands of failed experiments not as defeats, but as discoveries of ways that didn't work. Negativity would have told him, you've wasted your life. Positivity might have insisted, success is guaranteed, the next try will be the breakthrough. Neutrality is what kept him going. That attempt failed, adjust, try again. His resilience wasn't built on blind optimism, but on an unwavering focus on the next step. Or look at athletes who face career-defining injuries. Negativity tells them, your career is over, you'll never return. Positivity tries to comfort, you'll be back in no time, you'll heal faster than anyone else. Neutrality says, you're injured, recovery will take time. Today, the step is therapy, tomorrow, another, one rep at a time. Those who embrace this mindset often surprise the world with comebacks, not because they denied reality, but because they lived inside it, step by step. Resilience through neutrality also applies to everyday life. A student fails an exam. Negativity says, you're not smart enough, you'll never succeed. Positivity says, it doesn't matter, you'll get an A next time. Neutrality says, you didn't prepare well enough, study differently, focus on weak areas, retest. That neutral honesty becomes the bridge from disappointment to improvement. This approach also protects against the shame cycle. Many people, after failure, double down by punishing themselves with harsh language. They confuse accountability with self-destruction. Neutral thinkers separate the two. They own the mistake without destroying their sense of self. I didn't deliver today, that's on me. Here's how I'll adjust. That tone carries responsibility but not despair. And responsibility without despair is what builds resilience. Resilience is not the absence of pain, it's the ability to walk through pain without losing direction. Neutral thinkers accept the sting but refuse to let it paralyze them. They remind themselves, this hurts, but it is one moment, not my identity. And because they shrink the story down to its true size, they can return to action faster. What emerges from this practice is confidence that isn't fragile. If your confidence depends on never failing, it will collapse the first time you fall. But if your confidence is built on the evidence that you failed before, recovered, and grown, then nothing can shake it permanently. Each setback becomes proof that you can endure. Each recovery becomes fuel for the next. Over time, you stop fearing failure altogether because you know resilience will carry you through. This is resilience through neutrality,
A steady cycle of honesty, ownership, adjustment, and movement. No denial, no exaggeration, just truth and the next step. And in that cycle, you discover that failure no longer has the power to define you. Instead, it becomes the forge where your strength is made.
If resilience is about standing back up after being knocked down, then focus is about staying steady in the first place. The mind is constantly bombarded with noise, opinions, comparisons, distractions, endless streams of information. In the modern world, the greatest challenge is not lack of opportunity, but lack of focus. We can do anything, yet we are pulled in every direction. And a mind without focus cannot be neutral. Neutrality depends on clarity. You cannot ground yourself in the present if your attention is scattered across 10 different what-ifs, worries, and possibilities. Negativity thrives in distraction, slipping into the gaps when your mind drifts. Positivity tries to shout over it with blind affirmations, but the noise only grows louder. Neutrality requires discipline, the ability to return again and again to the one thing that matters right now. The discipline of focus is not about forcefully blocking every thought. It is about training the mind to notice distraction and to return calmly to the task at hand. This is the essence of mindfulness, but it's also the essence of performance. The archer focuses on the target, not the crowd. The student focuses on the page, not the grade. The leader focuses on the decision, not the approval of others. This is the discipline of focus in action. Consider how many times your day is fractured by distraction. A notification buzzes, and suddenly you're down a rabbit hole. A comparison flashes across your screen, and suddenly you're doubting yourself. A memory surfaces, and suddenly you're reliving old mistakes. Each of these pulls you away from neutrality. Focus discipline is about noticing the pull and refusing to follow it. Here is the distraction. Let it pass. Return to now. Training this discipline starts small. Choose one task and give it your full attention for a set time. No multitasking, no drifting, no reaching for your phone. Just one focus. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back. This practice strengthens the mental muscle. Over time, you realize that focus is not a state you achieve, it is a choice you make repeatedly. Neutral thinking and focus are inseparable. Neutrality says, what's real right now? What's the next step? Focus makes that possible by cutting away everything else. Without focus, neutrality collapses under noise. With focus, neutrality becomes razor sharp. Focus is often misunderstood. People think it means locking onto something with brute force, straining every nerve to pay attention. But real focus is gentler. It's not about forcing yourself never to wander. It's about training yourself to notice when you do and return without judgment to what matters. That practice is what neutral thinkers excel at. They understand that the brain is built to wander, but they've built the muscle to come back again and again to the present. Neutral thinking thrives on focus because focus filters out noise. Think of a pilot scanning instruments during turbulence. Negativity screams, "This is dangerous, you'll lose control." Positivity whispers, "It'll clear any second, no need to worry." Neutrality narrows focus. Check altitude, adjust heading, steady hands. By disciplining attention to what matters, the pilot keeps the plane safe. The same principle applies in daily life. Focus turns overwhelming chaos into manageable steps. Technology makes this discipline harder. We live in a world designed to fracture attention. Notifications, endless feeds, constant comparisons, each one pulling you into stories that are not yours. Negativity feeds on this. It whispers through the endless scroll, "You're behind, you're not enough, everyone else is doing better." Positivity pushes back with slogans, but the noise remains. Neutrality cuts through. This is distraction. Close it. Return to the task in front of you. That simple act of reclaiming attention, repeated daily, is how you build the discipline of focus. Training focus doesn't require hours of silence. It requires consistency. Start with short periods where you deliberately cut off distraction. Read a few pages without checking your phone. Write for a set time without glancing at messages. Sit in quiet and breathe without reaching for stimulation. Each time you catch yourself drifting in return, you're building the muscle. Focus grows from these small reps, just like neutrality. Neutral thinkers also use cues to anchor attention. An athlete might bounce the ball 3 times before serving. A speaker might pause for a breath before answering. These rituals are not superstition, they are focus resets. They signal to the mind, ignore the noise, this is the moment, this is the action. You can build similar cues into your own life. A deep breath before you answer a hard question. A pause before you send a difficult email. Each ritual becomes a doorway back to focus. The discipline of focus transforms confidence. When you can direct your attention where it matters, doubt loses power. Negativity may still whisper, but you don't feed it with attention. Positivity may still tempt you with empty comfort, but you don't drift into fantasy. You stay here, in reality, steady and clear. And the more you live this way, the more your confidence shifts from fragile to unshakable. Focus is the quiet discipline behind every great performance. It is the ability to silence what doesn't matter and to give your full self to what does. Neutral thinkers practice this discipline daily, in small ways and big ones, until it becomes who they are. And in that discipline, they discover a freedom most people never experience. The freedom to live fully present, fully engaged, and fully alive in each moment.
Leadership is not about titles, positions, or loud speeches. It's about presence. People look to leaders not just for direction, but for stability. When storms hit, when uncertainty rises, people naturally scan the room for someone steady enough to follow. A leader who panics spreads panic. A leader who pretends everything is fine spreads denial. But a leader who remains neutral, steady, honest, and grounded in reality gives others the confidence to keep moving forward. Neutral leadership begins with clarity. In difficult situations, negativity tempts leaders to exaggerate risks. This is a disaster, we'll never recover. Positivity tempts them to downplay reality. Don't worry, everything's great, there's nothing to fear. Both extremes destroy trust. People see through drama and they see through denial. Neutral leadership faces reality. This is where we are. Here's what we know. Here's the step in front of us. That clarity anchors the group. Another core of neutral leadership is responsibility. Fragile leaders deflect blame, pointing fingers when things go wrong. Positive-only leaders try to spin failure into something it isn't, glossing over mistakes with shallow encouragement. Neutral leaders own mistakes. They say, "We miscalculated. This didn't go as planned. Here's what we'll do next." That ownership builds trust because people know the leader won't abandon them when pressure rises. Neutral leadership also models composure. People's emotions tend to mirror the leader's. If the leader erupts in panic, anxiety spreads. If the leader forces artificial cheer, people feel disconnected. But if the leader stays calm, steady, and grounded, the group finds their own calm. Neutral leaders regulate their own emotions first, then help others do the same. They don't deny fear or frustration, but they keep the focus on what's controllable. Finally, neutral leaders build resilience in their teams. By refusing to dramatize setbacks or sugarcoat difficulties, they teach others how to recover quickly. They show that mistakes are moments, not verdicts. They encourage their teams to take ownership, to reset, and to keep moving. This creates a culture where confidence isn't fragile, but shared. Neutral leadership doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't need to. Its power comes from steadiness, the quiet confidence that says, "I will not collapse, and neither will we."
When people hear about neutral thinking, they often picture it in arenas of performance sports, business, military, crisis moments. But neutrality isn't just for the spotlight. In fact, its greatest power often shows up in ordinary life, in moments that don't make headlines but shape the quality of your days. If neutrality can help an athlete under stadium lights or a soldier in combat, it can also help a parent raising children, a student navigating exams, or a person simply trying to live with more peace and clarity. Neutral thinking in everyday life begins with self-identity. Many people carry the weight of old labels. I'm shy, I'm bad with money, I'm not good at relationships. These labels are stories built by negativity. Others hide behind unrealistic positive labels. I'm always strong, I never need help, I can handle anything easily. But both sets of labels distort reality. Neutrality says, this is where I am right now. These are my habits, these are my results. If I want to change, here's the next step. Neutrality doesn't define you by your worst failures or your most inflated self-image. It grounds you in the truth of this moment, with the freedom to act. Neutral thinking also transforms relationships. Conflict is inevitable with friends, family, colleagues. Negativity during conflict breeds blame. You always do this. You never listen. You ruin everything. Positivity tries to smooth it over prematurely. It's fine, let's just forget it. Everything's great. Neutrality stays in truth. This happened. It hurt. Here's how we can address it. By avoiding exaggeration or denial, neutrality makes space for honesty and resolution instead of cycles of resentment. Another area where neutrality changes lives is health. When people try to build better habits, eating well, exercising, sleeping more, negativity sabotages with shame. You blew your diet today. You'll never stick with it. Positivity tries to cancel shame with hollow promises. Don't worry, tomorrow you'll be perfect. Neutrality says, you overate today. That's done. The next step is to eat better at the next meal. No spirals, no fantasy, just grounded action. Over time, those small, neutral resets build lasting change. In daily stress, neutrality becomes a form of peace. Bills arrive, schedules overflow, unexpected setbacks pile up. Negativity convinces you the world is against you. Positivity insists it's all easy and you'll never feel overwhelmed. Neutrality reminds you, this is what's on my plate today. This is what I can do next, one thing at a time. That shift doesn't erase challenges, but it keeps you from drowning in them. Neutral thinking beyond performance is about living without drama. It doesn't mean living without emotion. Joy, sadness, anger, excitement all remain. But neutrality keeps those emotions from controlling your decisions or distorting your sense of self. It allows you to feel fully without being enslaved by feelings. And in that balance, life becomes steadier, calmer, and more intentional. Thinking in everyday life is not about stripping emotion away. It's about separating emotion from action. Most of the unnecessary suffering people create comes not from events themselves, but from the stories built around them. A neutral mindset allows you to feel fully while still acting wisely. You don't deny fear, anger, or sadness. You recognize them, acknowledge them, but you don't let them decide your direction. Take financial struggles as an example. Negativity says, I'll never escape this, I'm just bad with money. Positivity insists, everything's fine, money will just come to me somehow. Neutrality looks squarely at the truth. Here's my income, here are my expenses, here's what I can change today. That honesty may feel harsh, but it is freeing because it transforms vague fear into concrete action. Relationships offer another mirror. When trust is broken, negativity rushes to judgment. This relationship is over. I can't trust anyone again. Positivity tries to cover the wound too quickly. It's fine. Everything will go back to normal instantly. Neutrality says, trust was damaged. This hurts. Let's communicate, set boundaries, and see what can be rebuilt. Neutral thinking keeps people from overreacting in ways that cause deeper damage. It guides them toward resolution rather than dramatization. Neutrality is also vital in parenting. Children learn not only from what parents say, but from how they respond. A parent who panics teaches panic. A parent who denies difficulty teaches avoidance. But a parent who stays neutral, this is a hard situation, but here's what we'll do next, teaches resilience. Neutral parents model calm problem solving,
showing children how to face life's challenges without crumbling or pretending them away. Health challenges make neutrality essential too. Someone receiving a difficult diagnosis may spiral into negativity. This is the end, I can't fight this. Or they may cling to blind positivity. I'll be fine tomorrow, this will disappear. Neutrality acknowledges both the weight and the possibility. This is the diagnosis. Treatment will be hard. The step today is to show up, to take the medication, to follow the plan. Neutrality transforms fear into direction. Even in personal growth, neutrality creates freedom. People often overestimate or underestimate themselves. Negativity convinces them they'll never grow, that their past defines them. Positivity tricks them into thinking growth will be quick and effortless. Neutrality grounds them. I've made progress here, I still struggle here. The next step is practice. That steady, honest perspective builds long-term change. Neutral thinking beyond performance is about living a life less ruled by unnecessary drama. It doesn't erase joy or pain, it keeps both in proportion. It allows you to be honest without despair, hopeful without delusion. It creates space for clearer relationships, healthier choices, and calmer daily living. And once you practice it long enough, neutrality stops being a strategy you pull out in certain moments. It becomes a way of being, a lens through which you experience everything. That is why neutrality belongs not only in stadiums or boardrooms, but in kitchens, classrooms, hospitals, and conversations. It's not reserved for the extraordinary. It is meant for the ordinary, because the ordinary is where life is actually lived.
Thinking begins as a strategy, but over time it becomes something deeper, a philosophy of life. At first, you practice it in small ways during mistakes, after setbacks, in pressure moments. You remind yourself what's real, what's next. But with enough repetition, neutrality becomes your default wins. You stop needing to consciously reset every time, because neutrality weaves itself into how you see the world. Life itself becomes steadier. Living a neutral philosophy means refusing to be enslaved by extremes. Most people live on emotional roller coasters, highs that feel euphoric, lows that feel unbearable. They chase positivity like a drug and collapse under negativity like a curse. Neutral thinkers stop riding that ride. They experience both joy and pain, but they experience them honestly, without exaggeration. Wins are celebrated without arrogance. Losses are acknowledged without despair. Life becomes balanced, not because it is easier, but because your mind no longer twists reality into something it isn't. Neutral philosophy also transforms identity. Many people tie their worth to outcomes. Success means they're valuable, failure means they're not. That fragile foundation keeps them chasing and fearing constantly. Neutrality breaks this trap. It says, you are not your last success. You are not your last failure. You are the actions you take now. This steady identity frees you to grow without fear of collapse. Another layer of this philosophy is acceptance. Neutrality doesn't demand that life be perfect. It doesn't promise that every outcome will favor you. It accepts that setbacks, disappointments, and pain are inevitable. But acceptance is not surrender. It is clarity. It is choosing to see reality as it is and act anyway. This frees you from wasting energy wishing life were different, and gives you energy to respond to life as it is. Neutral philosophy also reshapes relationships. When you live neutrally, you stop projecting exaggerated expectations onto others. You no longer demand that people always meet your needs perfectly, nor do you dramatize conflicts into permanent fractures. You approach others with truth. This is what happened. This is how I feel. Here's how we move forward. Neutrality creates honesty without hostility, compassion without enabling. Over time, it builds trust and peace in relationships that once felt fragile. Living neutral also means living free from external noise. The world constantly pulls you toward drama, headlines designed to shock, opinions designed to polarize, comparisons designed to fuel insecurity.
A neutral mind consumes these inputs differently. Instead of spiraling into outrage or inflating into false pride, you see things clearly. This is the story. Here is what I can control. Here is what I cannot. That clarity protects your peace in a world designed to disrupt it. At its core, a neutral philosophy is about presence. Life only happens here, in this moment. Negativity drags you backward. Positivity drags you forward. Neutrality keeps you here, where action lives, where growth happens, where life is actually lived. When you fully embrace this, you discover that neutrality is not plain or empty. It is rich because it anchors you in the depth of the present. Neutrality as a philosophy doesn't erase struggle, but it makes struggle survivable. It doesn't erase joy. It makes joy purer because it isn't inflated by fantasy. It gives you the ability to walk through life steady, grounded, and free from the constant tug-of-war between despair and delusion. And in that steadiness, you discover something rare: peace.
When neutrality becomes a philosophy, it changes the way you see everything. Wins and losses stop defining you. Praise and criticism stop controlling you. The noise of the world loses its grip. You still feel, you still care, but you don't live at the mercy of extremes. You become anchored in truth, steady in presence, and grounded in action. That steadiness is rare and it's powerful. Living this way doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It doesn't mean you won't get angry, sad, or afraid. It means you won't let those emotions decide your identity or your direction. You'll learn to hold them, acknowledge them, and then act neutrally anyway. Over time, this becomes strength that others notice. People will wonder how you remain calm in storms, how you stay composed when others unravel. The answer won't be that you're unfeeling. It will be that you've trained neutrality as your foundation. Neutral philosophy also means freedom from perfectionism. Many people live trapped in the belief that they must always be flawless, that one mistake defines them forever. Neutrality breaks that chain. It allows you to admit mistakes without shame, to own them without collapsing. You learn to say, "I stumbled. That's real. Now here's the step forward." That rhythm, honesty, followed by action, is the heartbeat of resilience. As neutrality deepens, you begin to see that life isn't about controlling outcomes, but about controlling responses. You stop demanding certainty. You stop pretending you can guarantee every result. Instead, you focus on what you can truly do. Take the next right step, again and again. And as you string enough of those steps together, you build a life of strength and peace. The gift of a neutral philosophy is that it scales. It helps in the quiet of daily life, the spilled coffee, the argument, the late train. It helps in the storms, the failed project, the heartbreak, the crisis. And it helps in the moments that define you, the chance to lead, to perform, to create. No matter the scale, neutrality gives you the same compass. What's real? What's next? When you live this way, you find that confidence no longer feels fragile. You no longer need to hype yourself up with slogans. You no longer collapse when things go wrong. Your confidence becomes quiet, steady, and durable because it's built not on fantasy or denial, but on truth and resilience. That kind of confidence cannot be shaken because it does not depend on outcomes. It depends only on presence. The philosophy of neutral thinking is not glamorous. It won't get you cheering crowds or dramatic speeches, but it will get you something far more valuable: peace of mind, clarity of focus, resilience through storms, and a steady confidence that carries you through life. That is what it means to live neutrally, to walk through the world with both feet on solid ground, no matter how the winds shift. And that is the path to unshakable strength.